Across over 100 years of automotive manufacturing, this little island in the North Atlantic has produced some properly belting performance cars. Your traditional choices are the Jaguar E-Type, or the McLaren F1, or maybe for the connoisseur, even the Lotus Elise. But none of those are a patch on a truly classless performance car. One that cemented its name into history. For this month at Manor Park Classics, we have the giant-killing Mini Cooper. Now, I'm sure by now that everybody knows the general story of the Mini. Suez Crisis, bubble cars, Leonard Lord, Alec Izagonis, transverse engine, front-wheel drive, gearbox in sump, wheel at each corner, rubber cone suspension, 10 feet and a quarter of an inch. We didn't start the fire. But back in 1959, automotive journalists weren't quite sure what to make of BMC's new baby. To the British, this was a thoroughly radical and modern concept, but with its slender curb weight and phenomenal handling ability, it did not take long for the nation's motorsport types to take notice. Enter a man named John Cooper. You may well have heard of him. At the time, he was revolutionising Formula One with the first mid-engine world champion, driven to victory by Jack Brabham and Bruce McLaren. Cooper were a very, very serious business, and John Cooper knew how to design a racing car. And in an incredible stroke of luck, BMC just so happened to lend him one of the very first Minis as a press car. It goes without saying that Mr. Cooper loved his time with the Mini. In fact, he loved it so much that he drove it all the way down to Monza for the Italian Grand Prix that September, where the paddock gathered around to admire it. In fact, Cooper was fond of retelling a story from Monza where Aurelio Lampredi, former Ferrari engineer, stole this Mini and thrashed it about the Italian countryside, returning hours later, declaring it to be the car of the future. Predictably, Mr. Cooper went home and began plotting. Under the bonnet of a standard Mini was an 848cc variant of BMC's existing A-Series engine, in this form producing 33 brake horsepower. Nobody was under any impressions that this was in any way a performance engine in a performance car. But give it time, for the little lump under this bonnet would soon become one of the greatest performance small engines the world has ever seen. Cooper engineered a prototype Hot Mini and took it to see Alec Izagonis, the car's designer, and George Harriman, managing director at BMC. In his usual principled and straight-laced fashion, Izagonis fervently disagreed with the entire concept, believing the Mini should remain a people's car and not be corrupted by this need for speed. Fortunately for history, Harriman disagreed. He took it out for a drive, came back and told Cooper they'd build 1,000 of them. In this arrangement, BMC would treat Cooper as the works team in saloon car racing and would pay them £2 per car sold. But that nice round figure of 1,000 wasn't arbitrary, because the Mini Cooper was built to be an homologation special. Now, the standard Mini 850 was already competing, but its lack of power was its major fault, so Cooper's attention was placed firmly on improving the engine. Stroked out to 997cc, later 998, with a red-hot camshaft and a cylinder head from the then upcoming Austin Morris 1100, plus a new gear change and a pair of 1.25" SU carburetors, the first Mini Cooper debuted 2 years on from that weekend at Monza in September 1961. Meeting its targets of 55 brake horsepower and 85 miles per hour. Now, that still doesn't sound like a lot, but bear in mind that this is a 61% increase in power. With the addition of disc brakes, that original Mini Cooper is the car we have with us today, but there was a lot more to come. Expanded further to 1071cc, With a cylinder head by Downton Engineering's Daniel Richmond, 70 brake horsepower was extracted from the A-Series, leading to the birth in 1963 of the Mini Cooper S. The wheels kept on turning, however, this car lasting all of a year before its replacement by the Mini Cooper 970S and the Mini Cooper 1275S. The former was to fit into the under a litre capacity in circuit racing, with enormous valves and a tiny stroke making it a screamer. For rallying, however, the 1275 had some serious torque and a final figure of 76 brake horsepower, a whole 123% more than a normal Mini, still in a car that weighed 650 kilograms. As sober as this thing looks, with only its badges, wider track and contrast roof separating it from a Mini 850, this is one of the greatest racing cars the world has ever seen. In the forests, Minis finished on the podium of the Monte Carlo Rally every year between 1963 and 1968, winning in 64, 65 and 67. In 66 they won too, but were disqualified because of their headlamps, which was a farce. Minis won the Thousand Lakes Rally in 65, 66 and 67, and in all, Minis won 32 international rallies between 1960 and 1972. Then into the championships. Minis won the British Rally Championship in 62, 63 and 1970, as well as the Finnish Rally Championship and European Rally Championship in 65 and 66. Then over in Rallycross, they won the European Rallycross Championship in 1974 and 75. Off the rutted stages and onto the track, the Mini was just as impressive. These little cars, in one form or another, won the British Saloon Car Championship in 1961, 62, 69, 78 and 1979, by which point the Mini was already 20 years old. It also won the European Touring Car Championship in 64 and 68, as well as the Australian Touring Car Championship, winning its class in 1962, 63, 64, 66, 67 and 68. At Bathurst in 1966, Minis finished 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th and 9th. The best of the rest was a huge V8 powered Chrysler Valiant, which despite being in the class above, finished 6 laps down on Rauno Aaltonen and Bob Holden's winning little tiny Mini Cooper S. For 2 generations, these adorable little cars were unbeatable, and when you add films like The Italian Job, their culture is phenomenal, but it's the engineering that counts. Remember earlier my name check of Aurelio Lampredi? Well, he was chief engineer at Fiat, and after his thrash through the country, he sat down to design the next Mini. By rejigging a few components, he brought front-wheel drive, wheel-at-each-corner motoring into the mainstream, first with Autobianchi's, then Fiat's 128 and 127, the formula of which was then borrowed by Ford for the Fiesta and Volkswagen for the Polo and Golf. The Mini Cooper came along 2 years into Mini production, and 2 years into Golf production, along came the GTI. The Mini Cooper is directly responsible for the Golf GTI's existence, and if these cars had hatchback bodies, they would undoubtedly be the daddy of the hot hatch. So let's see what all the fuss is about. "55 brake horsepower, it's not a lot of power, but it is when your car only weighs 650 odd kilograms. And that means that in spite of this being just a normal 998cc Mini Cooper, this thing feels like an absolute rocket on the road. It's so dinky and it's so light, and you get the brilliant burble from that marvellous, really raspy and chuggy A-Series engine. Plus this one, which was an optional extra on Cooper S's, but is being fitted retrospectively to this one, is a straight cut gearbox, like a racing car. So it sounds it just sounds incredible. What a thing. Another thing that the Mini Cooper got compared to the normal Mini was a remote gear change. The standard Mini had what's known nowadays as the magic wand that goes straight into the bulkhead, straight into the top of the gearbox. But this has a much stubbier, shorter throw, much more direct change that underneath the car acts as a big engine steady. There's a load of metal beneath the car connecting the gearbox to this gear change. So while it feels quite vague around the gate, when you find a gear, it just clicks home so satisfyingly. In fact, that's another thing the Mini borrowed from the 1100. Or preemptively borrowed from the 1100, should we say. Because the 1100 didn't exist in 1961. What a fantastic little thing. But of course that goes beside the cylinder head from the 1100 that the Mini Cooper borrowed, and while it was nowhere near as hot as the eventual one found in the Mini Cooper S, it was enough at least to produce the original standard Mini Cooper and keep costs somewhat under control. Now, these engines were really very highly tuned, and as a result, they were not the most reliable of things in service. But the A-Series engine is amongst the most popular ever built, and so the performance parts you can get for it are incredible, and development just keeps moving on as well. So, you know, these engines are only going to continue to get faster and faster and faster. And then there's the platform of the Mini, the real reason why these were such a successful race car. It has the best turning of any car I've ever experienced in my entire life. And you can tell that it's got a really short wheelbase. Because the manner in which you can flick it into corners and get the entire car effectively sideways is incredible, and it's so controllable. It is just the most endearing of platforms. Of course, we have double wishbone front suspension, just about the best you can get geometry wise, and while it's all, you know, spindly little suspension arms, fundamentally the geometry is all there. At the back we have trailing arms, which are really very, very good indeed for a car of this type, front wheel drive, etc. But what separates a Mark II Mini, or a 1964 onwards Mini, or 64 to 70 should I say, you know, I'm thinking about just the Mini Cooper here. So yeah, let's just talk about the Mini Cooper. And from 61 they were launched, from 64 until the end in 1969 they gained hydroelastic suspension, as did normal Minis, which was only deleted as a cost-saving measure once British Leyland were kind of started to go belly up. But hydroelastic is a fluid-based suspension system that has a rubber cone, as you have with a normal Mini, doing your springing, but your ride height and damping are controlled by a water-based hydroelastic fluid, which goes through little valves on each corner in the unit, in each corner of the car, to allow that damping effect to the spring, but then has interconnecting pipes between this front corner, for example, and its corresponding rear one, independent side to side, in order to make it effectively anticipate the road ahead of it. It is a thoroughly clever suspension system. And while Minis have that reputation for being absolute bouncy castles on wheels, a hydroelastic Mini is not like that at all. It is a significant upgrade on the original rubber cones, and it's the system the Mini was designed to have. It just wasn't ready back in 1959. And again, it was the 1100 that finally brought that out in 1962. 2 years later, the Mini got it as well. And that means that this car is comfortable. Genuinely, the seats are the most uncomfortable part about it. Nice and buckety they are that holds you in this Mini Cooper. But you don't have that pitching effect you get in a normal Mini. There is still a bit of bounce there, partly because the Mini's wheelbase is so short. But you get absolutely no lessening whatsoever in the Mini's handling abilities with hydroelastic, because it's so progressive. And indeed, all the Monte Carlo rally winning Mini Cooper S's had hydroelastic suspension. Some people are a little bit scared of it purely because they don't know how it works. Hydroelastic Minis are the best Minis. They drive far nicer than the rubber cone ones. And that's how they came from factory. And when the standard Minis lost hydroelastic in 1969, when they went to the Mark III, the standard 998 Cooper was discontinued at that point. They kept building a Mark III Cooper S, only for a couple of years, and beside it they made the new Mini Clubman and the 1275 GT as a new accessible hot version. And those three cars continued with the hydroelastic. It's only the little Mini 850 and Mini 1000 that went back to the cones initially, which is proof that the Cooper S, the homologation car, retained the fancier suspension, that it is the choice. It's the correct choice for a Mini suspension. Minis are riotous fun, absolutely riotous. And this might not be the fastest one, of course, but what this car is on its own is just motor imperfection. It's ace little car. They have so much pedigree, and there's a reason that they have appreciated so much in the past however many years. But if you are interested in this one, then please do head over to our website. You can find the link in the description to this video. Go and read the description. Go and have a look at the pictures of this car, and even book an appointment and come and have a look at it for yourself.